Hello, everyone. We are going to continue our discussion on women's rights, and we are moving into the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s with the women's liberation movement. The women's liberation movement can find its beginning with the feminine mystique. So, by the 1960s, many innovations had led to more free time for people. Laundry can be done in a machine, reducing work times from over 14 hours to just 2. The dishwasher, vacuum, microwave, refrigerators replaced many of the traditional roles of a housewife. When women went to when children went to school, women began to feel unsatisfied and they didn't have the words to articulate why. They didn't know how to explain what they were feeling. Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, finally gave women the words to describe the issues they were facing in the 1960s. Women were unfulfilled because they don't want to give up their careers. Women's magazines, often made by men, gave them unrealistic and unachievable goals. And women's education had deteriorated to home economics and other classes preparing them for marriage in the 1950s. Next, we have the case of Griswold versus Connecticut. That's correct. This case takes place here in our state, 1965. Connecticut had a law that prohibited any person from using any drug, medicinal article, or instrument for the purpose of preventing conception. So that included pills, condoms, anything that would stop you from getting pregnant. November 1st, 1961, Estelle Griswold and Dr. Buxton opened a birth control clinic. 2 days later, the police came to investigate. Griswold openly explained how they were breaking the law to the police. 1 week later, Griswold and Buxton were arrested, tried, and found guilty. So this case went all the way to the Supreme Court, ending in the June 7th, 1965 decision, which was a 7-2 decision. The justices found that the U.S. Constitution protects marital privacy. Justice Goldberg concurred with the court and wrote a separate opinion to emphasize his view that the Ninth Amendment, which states that if the Constitution enumerates certain rights but does not enumerate others, it does not mean those rights do not exist. Next, we have Roe versus Wade. In June 1969, 21-year-old Norma McCorvey discovered she was pregnant with her third child. McCorvey allowed lawyers Weddington and Coffey to bring a lawsuit against Texas Attorney General Harry Wade. Again, in another 7-2 opinion, the justices found inherent in the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment is a fundamental right to privacy that protects a pregnant woman's choice to whether have an abortion. In the first trimester of pregnancy, the state may not regulate the abortion decision. Only the pregnant woman and her attending physician or doctor can make that decision. In the second trimester, the state may impose regulations on abortion that are reasonably related to maternal health. In the third trimester, once a fetus reaches the point of viability, which means the baby's able to live outside the mother's body, the state may regulate abortions or prohibit them entirely. Next, we have the pill. First available in 1957, the combined oral contraceptive pill became widespread after the Griswold v. Connecticut decision, protecting a married couple's right to privacy. This pill was seen as a revolution for young women. Women could now choose not to get pregnant, and women can put off having a family to go to college and work. The pill also helped launch a sexual revolution where young people could avoid pregnancy. Next, one of the big figures in the women's liberation movement is Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem became famous when she investigated and wrote an expose on the Playboy clubs and the treatment of women who worked there. Gloria Steinem founded the magazine Mrs., a magazine dedicated to women and the feminist cause. She worked tirelessly towards the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, and she worked on Shirley Chisholm's historic presidential campaign. We will talk more about that in the Black Rights section. Though it is important to note that Shirley Chisholm is the first woman to run for president, and she is also the first Black woman to run for president. Gloria Steinem also worked with the Stewardesses for Women's Rights throughout its existence. Now, we're going to talk about her counterpart, Phyllis Schlafly. Phyllis Schlafly wrote the influential and wide-reaching Phyllis Schlafly Report that shaped the viewpoints of conservative women. She was a lifelong Republican who ran for office several times. She was the head of Stop ERA, stop meaning stop taking our privileges. She campaigned against the Equal Rights Amendment, saying the ERA would take away gender-specific rights awarded to women. Those rights being dependent wife benefits under Social Security, separate men's and women's bathrooms, and the exemption from the military draft. Schlafly is very famous in saying, "I have canceled speeches whenever my husband thought I had been away from home too much." She was a famous conservative woman's voice up until the election of Donald Trump. So, we've talked about the Equal Rights Amendment a few times, but what is that? Well, the Equal Rights Amendment is, and this is the entire amendment, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. So, proponents or people who agree with the amendment said this will legislatively enforce equality for women. The opponents or people against it said this amendment will take away privileges that married women and mothers have. So, from this time, we had other legislative wins. Through the Equal Rights Act, we saw the creation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which wrote Title VII of the Equal Rights Act, which banned discrimination based on sex, among other criteria. There was the Higher Education Act, which had Title IX, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex in any educational program receiving federal funds, and thereby forcing all male schools to open their doors to women and athletic programs to sponsor and finance female sports teams. And then we saw divorce reforms. California led the way by having a no-fault divorce bill that was signed, making it possible for couples to file for divorce without having to prove to the court that their spouse was unfaithful or cheating on them, or their spouse had abandoned them. Within no time, other states adopted the culture, and couples could now split on the basis of irreconcilable differences. This gave women the chance to leave husbands, which in the past they might not have been able to. So as we continue on, it's coming. Even though sexual harassment was made illegal under the Civil Rights Act, it didn't become serious until the 1990s, when the testimony of Anita Hill before Congress over allegations of sexual harassment against Clarence Thomas caused a cultural shift in attitudes towards sexual harassment. It was around this time that people finally started to take it seriously. There's also the gender pay gap, which still exists. For every $1 a man makes, a woman makes 77 cents. In recent times, we saw the Me Too movement, which was started in 2006 by Tarana Burke and became a mass social movement in 2017. Women in mass came forward with allegations of sexual assault by powerful men, which led to another cultural shift regarding sexual assault and female victims. And then just this past year, we have the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned the Roe versus Wade ruling, returning the right to regulate abortion to individual states. This has led to many states putting severe restrictions or outright bans on access to abortion. So that is all for today. I'll see you next video.